Thank you for coming today. And what I would like to really share with you is what are the basic skills you will need to start developing in order to work in an environment that's going to be distributed. So we know with COVID-19, that has basically led to a situation where everybody is what's called suddenly distributed. Now, that's not going to go, we're not going to go back to the way things were for quite some time. So in this time, this becomes an opportunity for each and every single one of us to be able to develop the skills that will make us successful in this kind of environment, right? So treat it as an opportunity, treat it as a way of growing and adapting ourselves into this future. So in the news, right, one of the things that is on top of mind for most salaried people is what's going to happen to my job, right? And one of the things that typically happens in a recession or even depression scenario is that companies cut jobs. But then the thing is, they don't just discriminately cut jobs. They cut jobs where it is the lowest value adding jobs. So just yesterday, I had read that Uber basically eliminated close to 25% of their lower value work, right? Call center workers, support staff. So if you're a really trained professional that's really good at a certain set of skills, you almost have very good job security. And in Airbnb, for instance, they had let people go, but what they also did was they did outplacement. So a lot of these people who were placed out, like designers, digital workers, they basically got jobs pretty quickly, including the severance. So modern job security isn't so much about wanting to work in an organization for 10 or 20 years, but it's really about around your employability. How quickly are you able to bounce back and get a new opportunity? So in the news, there's a lot of reports out there around job skills that you need. Now, what I had done is I had summarized a lot of this research through my experience and my research to show you exactly how to think about reskilling or upskilling yourself in working in a distributed environment. So firstly, I want to do this, right? I want to know what you think is needed in a digital future. So take a moment now and go to menti.com and use this code at the top, 712055. And I'm going to ask you this question. What skills are required in the COVID-19 world? So we're going to spend a small moment here for you to just go to Mentimeter and key in what you think the skills are. So as you're doing this, one of the things that is required in the COVID-19 world is how do we engage people online, right? So if you're sitting at home, if you're working in a remote location, how do you engage each other? So are we able to do this? I don't see anything coming through yet. Oh, there you go. So this is coming through, right? You see things like digital marketing, programming, data analytics. Yeah, data is huge. So a tool like Mentimeter here, what this is demonstrating is how do I create digital engagement? How do I create real world engagement through a digital medium, right? So this alone is an example of how you could do that in a group of people. So what's coming through is digital marketing seems to be huge right now, pretty number one. I see coding, I see programming, communication. So what we're going to do for the rest of this webinar is to show you what are the basic skills you will need to enable yourself to be able to gain these skills, right? Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to move on. Wow, still coming in. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So one report I'd like to call your attention to is the World Economic Forum Future of Job Support. So they had recently launched an updated version of this early this year, and I think it's really timely that they had released this just before the COVID-19 virus. And what I've seen is that what COVID-19 has done is accelerated these trends. So if you look at the Skills Outlook 2022, right? So this was done a couple of years ago to look forward 5 years in the future. But what has happened with COVID-19 is that it has accelerated these trends. So if you look at the set of growing skills, things like analytical thinking and innovation is number one. And I know somebody in the previous slide had put in um, skills around critical thinking and innovation as well, and creativity. So if you look at the trends on the growing side, they're really around how do we work together in a complex environment, solve complex problems. So this is about collaboration, it's about ingenuity and innovation, problem solving. These are the skills that humans are best at. Now, if you look at declining skills, things like manual labor, manual dexterity, ability to have a good verbal auditory skills, a lot of these jobs that are basically declining due to automation. So if you look on the right side with the declining and growing number of hours needed for a profession, right? Basic cognitive skills and physical labor, that's on declining. But if you look on the right side of the chart, things like technological skills, social emotional skills, that's growing. So I would say that if you take a look at this research, consider it as these are the trends that are being accelerated by COVID-19. So to summarize, right, we need more creativity, innovation, and complex problem solving. But the question here is, how do we do this in a distributed work environment, right? So companies have been investing a lot of money and resources in creating innovation spaces, physical innovation spaces, right? That's where you see the beanbags, you see the massive wall to floor to ceiling whiteboards, or the post-it notes. But how do you do that if you can't even be in the same office together, right? So that's what we're going to cover today. So imagine this, right? In a post-COVID-19 world, what if you can work anywhere, anytime that you want? If I could do that, what I do is I'd sit on the beach. I basically will work from the beach. And I have done that before, right? Been to a beach, spent a week and a half there, still managed to stay on top of my work and had a great time. So that's already possible, right? And that's been possible for many years. Now, the complexity and the challenge is, how do we get more people to be adept at being able to work from a beach, right? So one of the things to consider is like all these tools and practices have already been in existence for a really long time, right? And that is basically comes in three problems, right? One is digitalization. So companies have been undergoing digital transformation for some time now. Some are ahead of others, but COVID-19 is really going to accelerate this. So digitalization or digital transformation basically means going away from physical assets, like no more physical paper, into electronic assets with fluid business processes and very quick handoffs, right? Gone are the days where a piece of paper or a stack of 4 files can be sitting in front of somebody's desk for 2 weeks, right? Through the use of digital processes, that's a lot quicker now. And we're able to work in distributed teams across time zones and geographies. Another prong of transformation is around AI and automation. So AI and automation is not just about robots, right? So they're even process robots now. And what these robots have done is they have replicated and replaced manual labor that used to be used around approvals, vetting reports. A lot of these are automated. So if you were to ask yourself, what kind of jobs will be automated? The thing that I would ask you is, consider whether the work that you're doing is of high or low value. Is it repetitive? And is it well understood? So if it meets these three criteria of being low value, repetitive, and well understood, that is a prime candidate for automation. The third prong is physical distribution and remote work. So the current pandemic has greatly accelerated this, where work from home and working remote used to be a privilege, and now it is becoming the norm, right? It's no longer an option. You have to work remote, at least for a foreseeable immediate future. So the question now here is, how do we actually look at this so that you can upskill yourself? So I just want to share this. You may even consider it in your own organization, whether you're a manager or your employee. COVID-19 has just accelerated everything, right? So I really like this joke where people in the digital transformation field has been struggling for years to convince the C-level to be able to invest in this, and now all of a sudden this virus comes about and everybody has to do it. Okay, so if I'm looking at myself, right, as a digital professional, what do I have to do? So the thing that you have to develop is how could I be productive in a distributed team? So it comes down to 3 prongs here. So the first prong is, how do you connect with others? How do you collaborate with them? And how do you communicate with them? So connecting is about how do I basically form a relationship with somebody else if I can't be in the same environment as they are. So there are many ways of doing this. And one way that we're doing this today is using Zoom. Another way is, how do we enrich the communication, right? And communication is no longer just an email or using text, right? We can communicate in many, many forms. And what we'll go through later is how do we communicate visually? And then lastly, how do we collaborate effectively? So working together is about creating mutual value together. And as what we said earlier, is how do we continue to serve our customers so that we can stay relevant? So I want to cover 3 parts here, right? And the first part I want to cover is the technology involved. So what technology do we need to enable ourselves to be a digital professional? So the first one is, how do you create a virtual presence? Right? How do we create a sense of belonging even while we're separated? So part of the challenge in working remote is feeling very separated from other people and feeling lonely. Now, tools like Zoom today, right, that's enable a lot of people to feel more togetherness while you're physically separated. I have friends who, what they have done is they've had virtual dates, virtual dinner dates. Um, Yoga instructors have done online classes. So this is a way that you can still bridge the physical divide and engage your colleagues and your customers. The other one is, how do you bring your whole self into every single virtual interaction? Now, we know that communicating virtually doesn't give you the full sense of communicating when you're with someone else, right? It's harder to see your emotions, your facial movements, your body language. It's really hard to see that. But there are many ways of being able to bridge that, right? And recreate the sense that you're actually seeing more of a person and understand more of their reaction. The other one is online engagement. So most of the time we're talking to people on a virtual engagement, right? We're talking to a screen, essentially. So what ways and methods can we use to really engage with them in the context of work? And a big part of that is interactivity, right? How do we make it interactive? How do we make it such that as I'm doing something, someone else is responding and I have a chance to respond back to them? So that enriches the ability to communicate with each other. So there are tools that help you do that. The other one is practices. So a key part of being a digital professional is, how do I collaborate in real time? How do I work apart but still together? So you can think of it as a electronics esports gaming team. So this picture is from a professional esports league, a team out of East Europe, right? What esports teams have been able to do is they are able to work together in a complex environment towards a goal and do it extremely effectively. Okay. So a lot of these practices have already been in other domains, but now they're starting to come into the professional work domain. So part of it is, how do we co-create value together? Meaning, how do we create value together without the handoffs, right? And then lastly is, how do we go beyond text and use techniques like visual thinking, right? How do I think in a way that is visible and other people can see my thought processes as well? So on a team level, what COVID-19 has accelerated is the adoption of agile ways of work. So agile ways of work, if I could summarize it, is around how do I create deep, regular, meaningful interactions? And this is more important today when we are separated physically, when you can't see your colleague at the water cooler or the pantry or have lunch with them, right? So how do you systematically and programmatically recreate those interactions that enable such rich communications of ideation, innovation, and creative problem solving? The other one is how do you work in a cross-functional team? How do you work with other people in a cross-functional team? How do you be able to contribute what specifically your expertise and complement someone else's expertise to create that value? And then lastly, how do you create rapid feedback, right? The more feedback that you get, the more you're able to adjust, and basically you end up being more agile as a team, being able to adapt to changing circumstances. Lastly is communication. So part of the shift in communication that's coming into the workplace is how do I create a sense of community, right? So if kind of the old paradigm of communication in the organization is that communication goes top down, right? The executives make a decision, it gets cascaded to upper management, then middle management, then frontline management, and into everybody else. What successful companies and very innovative companies have done is they have flipped that paradigm from a top-down communication style into creating clusters of communities, right? So you have a community around a customer segment. You have a community around a product. You have a community around a specific set of problems. And community basically brings people with common interests and common goals together, create a sense of belonging and a common identity with a very strong set of purpose and objectives. And then that's how they create value in a complex environment. It's about bringing people together. Now, if you look at examples of community that has really rapidly risen in the last few years, there'll be things like the Me Too movement, the Million Woman March, even COVID-19 response, right? So in Malaysia, I have a friend who managed to pull together a community of people creating PPEs, right? And their target was 5,000 pieces of PPE, and they did that within 3 weeks, all through the power of community. Lastly is consumerized communication. So just 10 years ago, if you were in a corporate environment, everybody had this thing called BlackBerry. I'm very sure you can't even find one anymore. And the reason for that is because of the iPhone. So the iPhones were initially not allowed in a corporate environment because it was deemed not secure. But what happened was executives started using iPhones. They like iPhones, and they still had to carry their BlackBerries. And one day they just say, "Why do I have to carry two phones? I just want to use my iPhone." Right? And now all of a sudden, iPhones are in the enterprise. The same things happen with communication styles, right? I know each and every one of you, you have to use your corporate email. You may have things like Skype, but really where you go to is things like WhatsApp and Facebook, right? So what has happened in the enterprise communication space is they have taken consumer behavioral patterns and created tools for the enterprise with those same behavioral patterns. So you have things like WhatsApp style communication for the enterprise, right? How do I create channels for community, but within the enterprise? Communication now has gone beyond emails, right? And we know that we either get a lot of spam in our email or we don't read our emails. So how do you communicate effectively and quickly? And what kind of tools and practices can you use? And the trend here has been whatever works for consumers, let's adapt it to the enterprise. Okay, so enough of me talking. I would like for you to try some of these things out. So, since this is a University of Manchester seminar, a webinar, the dean of the University of Manchester has given us a task, right? So we're gonna run a project, and the project here is we're gonna bake an amazing cake to celebrate the University of Manchester and our contributions into this pandemic response. So the first thing is what we're gonna do is I'm gonna demonstrate Google Docs. So some of you have already used this, but have you used it to the fullest potential? So I invite you now to use your laptop or your mobile phone, it works with mobile phones as well, to go to this document, right? So I put the link up there, is bit.ly/gdoc.um, or you can scan the QR code. Oops, excuse me. So when you do that, I'm gonna open up it on my side as well. All right. So some of you have probably, most of you have probably used GDoc, right? But GDoc was created with a very specific purpose in mind. How do I enable real-time collaboration with a distributed workforce? So I see here that there are 8 viewers logged in right now. So here's the mission, right? So the background of this is the marketing department for the University of Manchester has proposed that because the student body and the alumni have made significant contributions to the COVID-19 pandemic, the university would like to recognize this student body with an amazing cake, right? So the objective here is to bake a cake to celebrate the strides and successes that we are making adapting to the situation. Now, here's the things I want you to try, right? We're going to try collaborative editing. So add some text, add a comment, chat, or even paste a picture. So here's a challenge for you, whoever, the 9 people in this document, is can we collaboratively identify the size of the cake, what resources do we need, what team members do we need, and what responsibilities do we need to have to create this cake? Yeah, I see a comment. It says, wow, I did not know we can collaborate in editing with the Word document. Mind blowing. So let's start this off, right? I'm going to say the size of the cake would be, can feed 40 people. Right? That's the people in this webinar, or some number of that. So now for the people reading this document, just start typing in what resources you need or project team members that you need. Now I want to show you another feature here. You can add comments as well. There you go. And remember, we're doing all of this without email. We're doing this without talking to each other. That's the power of being able to collaboratively create something in real time. So for those of you who are looking at this and trying to understand what's going on, basically what's happening is with a tool like Google Documents where we're doing collaborative editing, as you're seeing what other people are doing, you can respond and adapt to what's emerging. Yeah, there's ability to chat here as well, but where is it? Yeah, I may not have turned on that feature. Right. So we have here, the size of the cake is 40 for 40 people. And someone asked, must the cake be one single one of mini cakes? So the background here is the cake will then be unveiled at a webinar and then cut and distributed via post delivery to each participating student and alumni. Okay. So you see someone here has put in a picture, equipment, an oven, and then you need bakers, buyers, chef, cake tasters, right? So in a couple of minutes, you've already seen, right, that even without talking to each other, we can already start collaborating, right? So this is a skill in itself. Gone are the days where an employee would ask if you could use Microsoft Office. Soon they'll be asking, are you able to collaborate with others digitally? Okay, so I hope that the exercise has given you an insight into how to use a tool like Google Docs differently. And I want to go through a couple of other tools before the end of this webinar. All right, so if I could kind of get your attention again, we're going to go on to another tool. So I want to introduce you to Jamboard. So Jamboard is a tool where you can do visual thinking. Right? So this is an example of visual thinking. So please go to that URL or use a QR code scanner to open up the Jamboard. All right. So Victor Teo asks, I think it may be overwhelming as too many people make changes at the same time. Well, you're right, Victor. Well, normally in the normal circumstance, you wouldn't do this without some conference call, or you wouldn't do it with so many people, right? But it's just a way of showing you the possibilities that you can use with a tool like Google Docs. All right, so I'm gonna move my Jamboard over here. So this is an example of a tool that recreates the ability to visually create value with somebody in an environment, right? So if you go into an innovation workspace, usually you'll see this massive whiteboard with post-it notes, and they can put pictures on it, they can draw on it, they can write on it. So Jamboard is a tool that will allow you to do a very similar thing. Now, it's one of the simplest ones. There are many other tools that can do that. I personally use a tool called Miro, and I have used that with in executive meetings, in facilitating management meetings, and most recently, I ran a training with 17 people using a Miro board, right, to teach them how to work in an agile way. So here's the things I want you to try, right? You can add a post-it note, you can write on the board, or you can add a picture. So I like, one of the powerful things I like about a tool like Jamboard is you can just copy an image from a web page or a screenshot and paste it into a Jamboard. So here's a question for you, right, is what might this cake look like, right? So we're baking a cake from Manchester, University of Manchester, right? So that's the sigil, the crest, the color scheme is purple. So how can we recreate that sense of what might this cake look like? So one of the things you can try is if you click the pen, you can draw it, say hi. Or you can add an image, right? You can drag and drop an image. Or what I like to do is I can also just cut and paste an image in. All right, so let me try that. Oh, we can only view. Okay, I'm sorry. How do I change this? Um, ah, okay, try that again. All right, I'm gonna try on my end too, just to make sure I can edit. There you go. You should be able to edit now. I'm gonna try adding a picture as well. There you go. So what I did there was I cut up, I took a portion of the screenshot and I put it into the Jamboard. So one of the things you can use a tool like Jamboard for is if you're having a meeting where you're trying to solve problems or you're trying to innovate or do something creative, you can use a tool like Jamboard with Zoom as a working surface. Right? So rather than trying to explain to somebody what you're going for or the objectives, you can show them what you're thinking, what it could look like, and you can do this in a collaborative environment. I think someone's trying to draw a cake there. Right? So use a tool like Jamboard and visual thinking to really enrich your digital interactions. Okay, lastly, I want to show you one last tool and then we'll summarize. So once I have, say, document, I've had a session on the visual thinking and I'm being all creative, how do I then manage work across a team of people? So I invite you to join this tool called Trello. So unfortunately, Trello doesn't allow access without, it doesn't allow you to add and edit unless you have an account. So I'll give you a moment to go to the link, create an account, and then you should be able to see a board that you can use to manage work with. So this is the Trello. So Trello is a very popular agile project management tool. And the thing with the tools that I've shown you today is they are all freely available, right? They have a free tier. So I see a few people have joined, right? So things to try here. Try adding a card, right? So this is a card, adding a card, move a card around, assign a card to somebody. You could try that as well. So I'm going to add a card right now. Right? So with this cake, right, what are all the different tasks that we need to accomplish and complete to get this cake ready? Right? So someone's put in design and cake design. If you click on the card, you can add some description here as well. Right? Circle. You can comment. I like spherical. Right? You can create checklists in here. Put a due date, or you can assign it to somebody. I'm going to assign it to Susie. Right, Susie, you've got to design the cake design. So in Agile, one of the simple ways of managing work is just using 3 columns: to do, doing, done. It is most basic way. So you know you're done when all the tasks are done. And one of the things that an Agile team does is called daily stand-up. And with all these tasks, you'll basically ask the team these 3 questions. You know, what have I done yesterday? What will I do today? Is there anything slowing me down? So a tool like Trello can really support that kind of work, whether you're a team member, you're a team lead, you're a manager, to be able to visually see the work and have the conversations around who's doing what every single day. All right, so let's summarize. So there are a lot of tools out there, and I'm only showing you 3 today. But the key element to really focus on is focus on the basics, right? It is how to connect with others, how to communicate with them, how to collaborate. So there's a lot of tools out there. What I've done for this webinar is I've created a little infographic that you can download later. I'm just going to remind you of the 3 basic skills and what technology and practices can you use to enable yourself to be a digital professional. All right, and with that, let's go to Q&A. All right, over to you, Susie.
Hi. Hello. Okay, so we have one from Jerome Gan on one, yeah? Do you think in the midst of the digital transformation, there will be a group in the population that will be left behind?
Yeah, definitely. So if you look at what we've covered today, it requires access to digital tooling, right? And unfortunately, that requires you to have a laptop, desktop, reasonably recent, and probably an internet connection, right? So in my experience and kind of conversations with the community, one of the gaps which are emerging, right, is the digital haves and the digital have-nots. So the fact that all of you here are dialing into the Zoom call right now is you're in the digital haves right now, right? It's the people who are not able to find out about this webinar or be able to attend it even if they want to. Those are people who probably would be left behind.
So we have another one. There is a comment. Just let me, I thought this is good. There is a comment. I think it may be overwhelming if too many people making changes at the same time. What do you think?
Yeah, so that's so one of the things I do is I do facilitation, right? So for this facilitation is the skill set around how do we work in large groups of people towards a common goal, right? So to summarize, it's both a practice and a process around how do you create commonality in a group of people so that we can all be heading in the same direction at the same time. So around say the Google Doc example, right? So what I have done previously with my team, working with about 10 people at the same time, is I had created sections for them. So what I did was I created an overall skeleton of the document, and I basically told the team to fill in the details. And that was amazingly productive in a very short amount of time. So you do have to create frameworks in the document to enable that deep collaborative experience.
Good point. Good point. Okay. We have at the Q&A section. Do you do online appraisal training course?
Yes, I do. So a lot of the work. So I do have an Agile Fundamentals course. So in classroom is 2 days. Online is about 3 days, 4 hours each per day, around how do you use all these tools to work collaboratively together. And we will go through both a combination of using the tools and a lot of the practices and facilitation techniques to getting large groups of people to work together effectively.
Okay. From Victor Teo, how do you balance the use of various online tools versus the risk of cyber security?
Yeah, so the tools I've shown you with the freebies. So a lot of these digital tools have a free tier, and how they monetize is they monetize for the enterprise, meaning to get an enterprise subscription, what you get in return is security features. So that could be single sign-on, that could be Active Directory integration, that could be admin features. So that's how they monetize is enterprises pay for security. Yeah, and a lot of these tools adhere to global security standards.
Another question from Shazlan Rahman. What is a suitable program to use for voting? For example, say if you have 30 to 40 team members who wants to decide the most popular decision in a set of options.
Yeah, so you can use Trello. So Trello has a voting feature. So that's the tool that we looked at with the cards. So you can create cards for each option, and then you have people vote on it. I also use a tool called Miro, which is another virtual whiteboard like Jamboard, but it does have a built-in voting feature.
Another one, how do psychology graduates fare during the post-pandemic environment? Oh,
Oh,
okay.
um, okay, I have an opinion on this, but I will have to say I'm not a psychology professional. However, I am entering a field called organizational development, right? And organizational development is the science and the practice of the psychology of a large group of people, or organizational psychology. I would say if you want to look at how you can apply yourself into um, a trend that's emerging, is look at the work of people like Daniel Kahneman, Adam Grant. These are organizational psychologists, and their work is becoming increasingly popular in both the consumer and the enterprise space.
Oh, I think there is also from the chat, there's a comment by Douglas Go. I'm using Asana for managing projects now. It is really user friendly.
Yeah, I agree. I used to use Asana as well, but I've shifted to a tool called Notion. I mean, for no reason, but basically I just like exploring different tools.
Mm. Okay. Okay, next one is security and safety was indeed one of my concern, especially in financial institutions. How can we ensure information discussed and shared on tools like Jamboard is safe?
Yeah. So if I were a CISO, like the Chief Information Security Officer, right? One of the things I would look at when procuring cloud tools is what security standards they adhere to. So I'm not a security expert, but I know enough that enterprise-grade tools usually publish what standards they adhere to and what audits that they have passed, right? So that's one of the considerations for tooling selection in enterprise. Some tools also enable an on-premise instance, but increasingly more and more companies are moving away from this because it's not worth the investment for a few companies that still want to have on-premise instances.
Thank you, Zee. Next one is from Kat Xiong Cheng. What is the role of leadership in this new norm? And I just combine it with another question from another person. Do you know how many Malaysia company is not digital ready due to COVID-19?
So my personal opinion around leadership and management. So my last role, I was a senior manager reporting to the CIO. A lot of our work was around creating an environment in which people can do their best work, right? And their best work would, and how to do the best work is we invested in people, invested in infrastructure. So when COVID-19 hit, Seek was ready. Like it was, we were more than ready because people were already working from remotely and at home because we were working with teams in China and Hong Kong and Australia already. So um, on the work and infrastructure level, we were ready. Now, what has emerged since then, as I check in with my old colleagues, is how do we deal with the feelings of loneliness and separation? So before I left, we had invested heavily around employee assistance programs, creating relationships at work and things like that, and using communication channels to create communities. Like we have communities around disciplines, like you have a design community, you have a security community, you have a book club in there. So we used to use a tool, use a tool called Slack, SLACK, to create communities. And this is a way where a lot of the young people are actually using now to really connect to each other. So that's why I see the role as a role of management and leadership. I think the second question is how many percent of companies which are not digital ready? Oh, I wish I had that number, honestly. But I would say while a lot of companies have immediately adapted to enabling some functions to work remote, but it's hard to do it sustainably over a long period of time, right? There's a lot of companies here that still rely on physical assets, right? Either things like machinery or a lot of their business processes are still using things like paper, right? So how are you going to bring paper and pass it around when you can't even see each other? Right.
All right, we have questions from Adila and Shahab. So I'm just combining it. How do you make digital collaboration tools more accessible to technologically challenged groups? And then how do you keep the momentum across department on using digital tools?
Yeah.
There is a worry that once employees return to workstations, teams will go back to the old ways.
Yeah. So I think on the first question, yes, I think that question around how do we make technology accessible, I think that's something that the tech industry needs to, well, both tech industry, private industry, and government needs to address, right? Because um, how do we include people in the digital economy is critical for any country's economic development. To give you an example, I was in China a couple of years ago, and I was in Shenzhen, kind of the electronics hub of China. I did not use cash at all. Everything was using WeChat Pay. And one of the things I saw that completely blew my mind was I saw someone begging for money using WeChat Pay. So what had happened was he would print out a QR code and then basically write down please give me enough money so I can buy a phone. And then once he gets enough money, he'll go to a phone vendor and then cash in his WeChat wallet for a phone, and then that's the moment that person enters the digital economy, right? So this is a very big problem, but I am hopeful because the cost of technology is decreasing day by day. But what I feel is really critical is digital literacy, the education around how to be a digital professional. Second one on the how quickly on the skills, like applying it and keeping it. So that's where coaching comes in. So a lot of the work I do is actually coach teams to work this way. And the benefits of this is not just about being able to work distributed, right? A lot of the benefits are even when you're in an environment together, how can you improve and increase your ability to collaborate, right? So that's so one of the drivers for adopting agile ways of work is things like heavy processes, bureaucracy, long hands-offs, slow time to market, um, or teams which are not creative enough, things of that nature. Yeah, Susie, I think there's a few questions on Menti as well. Let's go through it. Um, I think this one we've answered. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh yeah. Oh, what AI trends are you seeing with blue collar activity? So that's a huge disruption right now. We need to rethink blue collar activity and what is the nature of blue collar. My personal opinion is that humans are best using non-repetitive creative endeavor. And my personal opinion is that's why we need to invest way, 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 way more in education. Um, one really scary trend is in the US is there are numerous companies investing in automating trucks, like lorries. And if all truck traffic were automated, it will affect 30% of the American economy because either someone's working for truck driving or their families are affected. Is there any tools recommended to monitor business performance? Yeah, so this is a set of tools called BI, Business Intelligence. So you can use tools like Microsoft Power BI, Datadog, what's the other one? Can't remember the other one, but these are basic business performance. You can use them to run business performance. A company I used to work for called Nintex also has a tool around process performance, right? How quickly can you run through a process or go from stage to stage? So these are all ways of quantitatively understanding the performance of the business. All right, I think those are the questions from Menti. Is there anything else you need to cover, Susie?
There's a couple on asking of because due to this change of learning new skills, right? How do they quickly learn the skills and apply them at work? Because these people, we are in this, doesn't matter whether fresh grad or newly experienced job or maybe middle management, I think we all need to know this.
Yeah, I would say part of getting the practice is definitely equip yourself, educate yourself. So this webinar is just to expose you that there's these skills. So you can go to courses like Udemy, Coursera, edX. There are lots of courses out there that you can learn how to do these things. And I would say start introducing it into your workplace. Like a crisis like COVID-19 creates a lot of opportunities to change how people work, right? So if you're a student, if you're in the workplace, you can say, hey, you know what, I want to try this thing out because I saw in a webinar. Let's try it out so to see if it works for us, right? Just try it out. Even my kids at school, right? They're learning how to use Google Classroom and Google Docs now because the teachers are using that to create group work for the students. Right? So it's applicable to almost kind of any environment in which you have to work as a group. Now, if you're looking to get more practice, I would say you can go for training. I'm a trainer, or join community, right? So there are communities around COVID-19 response, Agile Malaysia around one of the communities. So these are all communities where you can kind of engage. And then a lot of the community members are already using tools like this to coordinate people. All right, back to you, Susie.
Okay. There is this what other platform that we can be used to presentation to create presentation online instead of just using PowerPoint?
Yeah, there's a few. Google Sheets, PowerPoint. Um, there's yeah, the name escapes me, but there are numerous sites. I think if you just Google online presentation tools, you'll get a list of them. There's one specifically, but I can't remember the name right now.
Two more questions and then we are done. What are your thoughts and strategies when overcoming the challenges of onboarding tech in corporations?
One of my favorite topics. So one of the challenges I face in organizations, how do you introduce change, right? So the kind of principles that I use to introduce change is you must make it valuable, right? And valuable isn't just telling someone it's valuable. You have to make it feel valuable to the person that you want adopting it. It must be easy, right? Easy to learn. And the third one is create an environment which incentivizes the use of that tool or that practice. So I'll give you an example. Like nobody had to teach you how to use Facebook or WhatsApp. You just kind of figure out how to do it yourself, right? Because it was easy to use and you had sufficient incentives to use it because that's where your friends and family were. So a lot of good enterprise technology is using the same approach as consumer technology to be able to create an ease of introducing it to the workplace.
Okay. Hi. Well, this is very specific to law degrees. One has to have specific skills to set to thrive during these tougher times. What is your take on law degrees in the near future?
I am definitely not equipped to answer that question given I do not have one. However, okay, I'll share this. So part of the research that I've done is unfortunately law is one of the professions that was identified for disruption because it is reliant on a fixed set of knowledge, like the laws basically, and precedents. And then a large part of the work is considered repetitive. So I guess as a principle, you look at what value you can add as a person, right? Be aware of the trends around automation. And I know I have friends who came from a law degree but have kind of pivoted their careers, right? And a lot of them have entered entrepreneurship because it is a knowledge of the law and the legal processes and the government bodies that actually give them an edge when it comes to starting new businesses. Oh, and
I think
lastly, lawyers are trained to be critical thinkers as well.
mm,
Definitely apply critical thinking. You don't have to apply to law, you can apply to a lot of other things. And critical thinking is one of the growing trends and needs for the future worker.
yeah, and complex problem solving too, right? To together with the critical thinking. All right. I think there are a few just comments. I think there are mixed feelings by Victor Teo on Workplace by Facebook because his organization is using Workplace by Facebook, so he has mixed feelings about it. And also Razma Othman commented like join on online hackathon. It is fun and all tools is online and digital.
Yes.
Yeah.
That, Rasman, thank you for that. Yes, a hackathon is a great way to learn how to collaborate really quickly in a high pressure situation.
Okay, last but not least, actually a few people asking like, how do I sign up for your training, Z? How can I contact you?
Right. So thank you for that. So connect with me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Um, Actually, if you could, right? So I've summarized a lot of my talk, my findings into two documents. So one is a infographic, and the other one is a PDF with some a recent summary. So if you go to this link, the Bitly or the QR code, you can download that after you answer a quick survey. It also brings you to my website, and that's how you can get in touch with me. So one of the things I want to start doing as well is create a way where I can engage you to give you the things that I learned, right, and the things I put together. So if you can fill out the survey, sign up for the mailing list, I will basically start sending you useful things. I hope you find useful to enable yourself to be a digital professional.
All right. Okay, please feel free to use this to capture this link in and this context and scan that, and at least that you are aware of how to connect to Z. We will also share you the recorded webinar together, recorded webinar to on the Facebook, on YouTube, and other social media platform. Any other things that, any other areas that you would like to mention, Z?
Yeah, so today's webinar was really just the first step, I would say. One of the things I like to tell my students is, get the awareness and just start practicing, right? And one of the things I've done myself, I use this with my children, right? It's really fun. It can be really fun. You make games with these tools. It can be really fun. You can introduce it to your team. And the thing I like about these set of technologies is that they came from a consumer background, so they're really easy to use. Right, they're really, really easy to use. So keep it up. If you want to get in touch with me, please do. And I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best.